do think we have a quorum too, so.
Great. Should we call this meeting to order? All right, excellent. Could you please do a roll call?
Yes. Committee member Breeding?
Here.
Committee member Fasoon?
Here.
Committee member Larson?
Here.
Committee member Peterson?
Here.
Committee member Mira Venkatesh?
Here.
Vice Chair Merchant?
Here.
Great.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So I guess the first item is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, September 15th, 2021. Does anyone have any comments on those meeting minutes? Yeah, Committee member Peterson.
Yeah, so I was just thinking under the future agenda items, it would be good rather than just saying there were some suggested, we actually list them, which in this case was staff ability to handle workload and implementing CAP actions. And the other one was current city resilience measures for addressing smoke, air quality, and heat, I think. But I think it's really good to put those in because unless we jotted them down, we'll kind of lose track. And sometimes it's good to make sure we bring those or keep our eyes on those. Thank you.
Just so I'm clear, are you proposing that we change the minutes?
Yeah, I'm proposing under, hold on a sec. I can look at it. It was future agenda items, and just instead of saying complete committee members announced requests for future agenda items, that we actually say future agenda items are staff ability to handle workload for implementing CAP actions and current city resilience measures for addressing smoke, air quality, heat. That's what I got out of my notes from what we put. I just think it's good to have the future items actually listed.
Does that need to be done by motion if it's to amend the minutes in that way?
I could make a motion that just says.
Or what's the protocol?
We can make a motion to approve the minutes with a minor edit, and then I can make that edit before we upload it officially online, or the committee can request that we bring it back at the next meeting for the committee to finalize at that time. Either approach.
Committee member Peterson, would you like to make a motion to make this as a minor edit?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the minutes with the following change, that item 7 will include the specific future agenda items listed, which were 1, staff ability to handle workload for implementing CAP actions, and 2, current city resilience measures for addressing smoke, air quality, and heat.
Second.
Okay. Could we get a vote, please?
Yes. Committee member Breeding?
Yes.
Committee member Fasoon?
Yes.
Committee member Larson?
Yes.
Committee member Peterson?
Yes.
Committee member Venkatesh? Mira Venkatesh?
Yes.
Vice Chair Merchant?
Yes. All right, motion carries. One minor thing that I wanted to add to about the minutes is committee member Fasoon's name was spelled with 2 O's, S-O-O-N instead of S-U-N. I don't know if that's an alternate spelling or otherwise, if we could correct that throughout.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I apologize, committee member Fasoon. That is my mistake. Just note that. Okay. Great.
Great. All right. Does anybody else have any further comments on the minutes? All right, excellent. So next we have public comment for anyone who is in attendance. I see we have a number of members of the public in attendance, and this is for any items that members of the public would like to address to the committee that are not covered by the agenda. So if you would like, if members of the public who are here, if you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and we can bring you in. I see one hand raised.
Yes.
So we'll give 3 minutes for comments, please.
Great. David, you are allowed to talk. You'll need to unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. So I'm not sure if this is my first time to joining and watching this this meeting. So I'm not sure if this is the proper time or for me to speak up here. But I think there's a sense of urgency in the world about the climate change, et cetera. And I think I'm glad to see the City of Albany is doing all the right things. We've passed Measure DD. We're doing, I think we've got some motivated committee members here and et cetera. But I was wondering, is the committee does it have like a more detailed action plan or implementation plan for that kind of further provides more detail than the climate, the CAAP? That's a good start and a good document. It's kind of but it's at kind of a high altitude. It'd be nice to see something with more detail, more meat on the bones that the public can review, and progress would be updated on a monthly or quarterly basis. Maybe there's a dashboard available that we could citizens could see what milestones are, what key actions are being worked on, when those things should be accomplished, et cetera. I've seen some other city websites, like I've been looking at City of Boulder. They're pretty progressive, and they've got good. They have a dashboard and metrics on their programs, and showing progress against their goals of reduction of carbon emissions, and a whole variety of things. It really is excellent, and I think provides some accountability for the city to move forward with the program that the citizens are want to see enacted. So I wondered what's the plan for the City of Albany to maybe step up and provide more details on the implementation plan, and tracking and reporting on it. And that's it.
Thank you so much for that comment.
At this time, I don't see any other members of the public with their hand raised, but we'll make, oh, here we go. Lucinda? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I'm Lucinda Young. I'm an Albany resident. I also would like to echo what the previous speaker just said, in that I think the Albany residents need to have status reports and feedback on what's being done to move us forward with the Climate Action Committee, the Climate Action Plan, especially since we are all Measure DD passed, and we are all contributing to that. And as residents, we need to have some kind of periodic status reports on where we are in the Climate Action Plan. Rather, I think it's very easy, since it doesn't have a target date until 2035, I believe, to really just postpone implementation of the plan. So I just wanted to express that concern as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucinda.
If any of other of the members of the public would like to speak, please raise your hand using the raise your hand function on Zoom. We'll give it 5 more seconds. Okay, no other members of the public with their hand raised. Back to you, Chair Merchant.
Thank you. So next we're moving on to item 3, announcements. First, we have item 3-1, sustainability events and resources.
Yes, our standing item pull up my list. As we move into the holiday season, that often comes with buying a lot of new things and potentially cleaning out homes. So I wanted to remind the committee as well as members of the public that if you have items in your home you're not sure what to do with before disposing of them, I encourage you to look at stopwaste.org's resource guide, where you can type in the name of an item you have and it'll generate a list of options you can consider for reusing, donating, repairing the item you have in hand before you dispose of it or recycle it. That tool is available at stopwaste.org. We also have officially launched our induction cooktop lending program. We've had one Albany community member rent our cooktop and use it. Michelle has more details on that. But if you're interested in renting a single burner induction cooktop, you can check out our website or contact Michelle at mplaus@albanyca.org. Please spread the word to your networks. We're also encouraging more businesses in Albany to become certified green businesses through Alameda County Green Business Program in coordination with the city. Please check out our website for more information. And exciting news, the much celebrated Albany citywide garage sale has been scheduled for 2022. May 7th, 2022 will be the date. It will be co-hosted between the City of Albany and City of El Cerrito. So mark your calendars, start clearing out your garage, make space for your electric vehicles, get rid of your household hazardous waste by visiting stopwaste.org/HHW and visit the stopwaste.org resource tool as you continue to look through all your things and prepare for the citywide garage sale. That is all I have for sustainability events and resources at this time. Nick Peterson, or Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, so I wondered that the induction cooktop is a loaner program, right? It's not, you don't rent it. I mean, there's no charge, right?
Loaner, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. And then when, I have, I've been attending some things and I have some suggestions and wanted to make it public for other members of the Climate Action Committee and staff. I attended some good things. Is this the time I should mention that, or is there another place on the agenda? It seems like it would fit here.
As long as they're announcements, yeah, versus discussion, that works.
Yeah, no, it's just, so I think through just my searching and being involved on a lot of lists, I got invited by the California Climate and Energy Collaborative, also known as CCEC, to participate in their local energy resources network, LERN. And the first in the series that they're doing, I think it's a monthly series, was on, I think it was just about a week ago on a Tuesday. And I found this was really, really helpful. There were participants from many organizations across California, from state and from local, and lots of great resources and information. And on October 12th, learned of some very useful information and resources available from the Clean Air Resources Board. And I suggest everyone check out their coolcalifornia.org website. So that's www.cool, just all one word, coolcalifornia.org. They have a funding wizard where they've aggregated available grants from all over the place, including federal, state, and all sorts of things. And I just think it's an excellent resource. I wasn't aware of it at all. I don't know if staff has, but I think attending these series, they just last an hour, but you get all sorts of, there are people participating from all over the state. I think there were about 80 participants in this one, but I highly recommend it. And there are also a few others that are done by the local government, what is it called? Local Government Commission or something like that. It's another organization that helps local governments find resources for equitable climate action plan implementation. So if you're not participating in those, I highly encourage it. Thanks.
Great. That's it for sustainability events and resources. At this time, I would like to turn the Zoom microphone over to our newest Climate Action Committee member, Mira Venkatesh, for an introduction.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. So I am the newest CAC member. A little more about myself. So I'm a full-time resident of University Village and a recent MBA grad from UC Berkeley. I work full-time in a climate tech incubator called Breakthrough Energy as a business fellow, sort of helping accelerate the adoption and commercialization of hard to decarbonize clean technologies like cement, steel, to market. So that's what I'll be doing for the next few years. It's a pleasure serving as your Climate Action Committee member.
Welcome.
So glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great. And in other exciting news as well, I would also like to pass the Zoom microphone to our new Civic Spark Climate Fellow, Johnny Menhanet.
Thank you, Lizzie. I'm pleased to be here with all of you both this evening and for the coming 10 months. My name is Johnny Menhanet. This is my second year with the Civic Spark program, but first with Albany. I served last year with Milpitas in the South Bay. And prior to that, studied city planning and Spanish and Portuguese at Berkeley. Look forward to this upcoming year with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Johnny. And now I'd like to pass it to committee members Merchant and Larson for an update on the Carbon Free Albany Community Forum taking place tomorrow evening on Zoom.
Thank you. Yes, so Eric and I are hosting a community forum tomorrow night at 7 p.m. virtually. The focus of the forum is the Carbon Free Albany website, and we are going to talk about how we can help community leaders bring Carbon Free Albany to their community groups. And we are going to work on developing a challenge for 2022, where we're going to have a friendly competition to see just how much participation we can get in that website. Anything to add, Eric?
No, that's great. Yeah, we're looking forward to talking to the community. It's our first attempt at this. We were planning this last year, and kind of, the COVID thing kind of caught up with us. So this will be our first attempt to get community members involved and really engaged with the website and carbon reduction.
And Committee Member Peterson, did I see you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, a couple both. So this is on Eventbrite, I think. So you can actually see how many people have registered. Do you have any idea of what attendance looks like?
We had checked a couple of days ago. I think we had 12 maybe people who had registered, which is great, because if each one of those people is representing a community group of 5 to 10 people, that would be a significant increase over our current participation in Carbon Free Albany. And we've done some more outreach, so there could still be people that are signing up last minute.
Great, thanks.
Great. And at this time, this is an announcement that isn't formally on our agenda, so we'll just briefly mention it. I'll pass it to Michelle for an update on recent council action.
Yes, didn't make the agenda because it's so recent, but on Monday night, I'm happy to tell you that the City Council approved the multifamily EV charging pilot program that we discussed last month.
Yay.
Great.
That concludes our announcements. So I will pass it to you, Vice Chair Merchant, to make a call for public comment.
Great, thank you. Would anybody who is currently attending like to give any public comment on the announcements that were just made? Please raise your hand if you would like to make a comment. I don't see, oh, I see, yep, I see one hand. So go ahead, David, we'll get you queued up to give a comment. Thank you.
David?
Well, when it comes to the, tomorrow night and the, the program, I'm just pessimistic that program is going to be successful, and I mean, I totally support what's going to happen tomorrow night and try and get some energy behind it, but I kind of feel like it's just not going to be successful in the long run, and just would hope that maybe if we can't get it to really get off the ground and get going, maybe we could put spend our resources better in some other fashion. It's been out there for quite a while, and I think it's just going to be hard to get people to spend the necessary time to make it successful. That's it.
Thank you for your comment. Does anyone else have a comment they would like to provide at this time?
Don't see any other members of the public with their
Okay.
hand raised at this time.
Thank you. So we can move on to members of the committee. Committee member Peterson, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to actually respond to that. And I've heard that. I've actually gotten that from council members and other people who are very involved. And I think we need to do a better job of explaining the value of the platform. And rather than just trying to sell it as kind of a fun thing for and all that, if there was some way to almost make it required for certain things, with an incentive, I think that would be a good idea. As far as I know, this will be the only way we can get any idea, unless we hire some pollsters or something to go out and poll the city, that we'll have any idea of what Albany residents are doing along the lines of climate change actions. It'd be very laborious otherwise to do that. So I think if that's our goal, if we're going to use this platform in that manner to aggregate sort of generalized data on what actions are happening across the population, we need to get way more of the population involved in the platform. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow and hoping that it is people that are going to move it out. But I think we need to find more accelerated ways of getting people involved than just having random events. I think people are sort of ignoring it a little bit much. I was hoping we would have heard that there were 100 people signed up or something, but if in order for this to really be effective, we have to have at least 1,000 to 2,000 people households signed up on this, or it's kind of pointless.
I mean, I think all these points are well taken. And the way we're structuring the forum tomorrow is it's not just going to be me and Eric presenting. We're going to create space for kind of brainstorming and talking as a community about ways that we could really drive participation in the platform. So I think that, yeah, it's not just, once again, we're going to present this platform and everybody sign on. We really want to discuss as a community how we could drive participation. And if this is the right vehicle. I mean, it is a really powerful platform. It's pretty big lift to get signed up on it. But we're creating a lot of space in our presentation for us all to kind of talk and brainstorm together as a community about how to do this. So thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? All right, so I think we're ready to move on to presentations. Is that right, Lizzie?
Yes.
Great. All right, so we'll now move on to agenda item number 4, presentations. The first one is a presentation on House Grades Energy Ratings Program.
Great. I am promoting North Lennox, our presenter. He should be here in just a second. There we go. Always scary when folks get lost in the Zoom space.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. This is actually the second time that I've spoken to the committee. The last time was 3 years ago in 2018, after I'd served as a home energy score assessor for 2 years. And at that meeting, the committee had great feedback on the home energy score and Albany's experience with the home energy score and some of the challenges of that program. And that was really the genesis for coming up with a new approach to addressing building decarbonization, which has now turned into house grades. Luckily, there was a grant from Yale University's Renewable Thermal Alliance that helped fund the project, and just finished sort of the prototype a few months ago. And so I'm really excited to present it to you, because in some ways, the city of Albany was sort of the catalyst and the prompt for creating the project, and it's really meant to be for Albany. So it's very exciting to present it to you. Can you see my screen? The presentation? Let's see. Okay.
We can see it now.
So, okay, so House Grades is an app that simplifies energy research. It uses photos to provide an asset-based analysis of building efficiency and electrification, and the data collected enables communications to homeowners, buyers, and cities. The grades allow for new marketing opportunities for all electric homes in the real estate market that further support electrification. That's House Grades in a nutshell. And if I might just talk a little bit about the state of the electrification of houses. About 20% of carbon emissions come from houses, and in the United States today, there are 69 million fossil fuel space heaters, 63 million gas water heaters. If we want to get to zero emissions by 2050, we need to be replacing that equipment at a pace of about 4 million machines a year, and we're currently at several thousand machines, so the pace that we're at in the United States is far too low. So we need to move much faster in terms of electrifying our buildings. And we know in Albany, 90%, over 99% of Albany houses are tied to fossil fuels today. There's been a lot of positive developments in California around this, related to electrification since 2018. The REACH codes are now going to create all electric new buildings, which is fantastic. There are now financial incentives for heat pumps. There's new technology like 120 volt heat pump water heater that's going to become commercially available. And they're even talking about, there's a proposal at the Air District for even mandating all electric appliances starting in 2027. But there remain a lot of challenges to electrifying single family homes. All of the equipment has different owners. All of the homes have different owners. Some of the homes, the owners they're even renting out to houses. And so they aren't even in the house where the equipment is. And so often you find that homeowners don't know that the equipment that they even have. There's also a real lack of education when it comes to heat pumps, and people aren't really aware of the benefits of heat pumps. When they think of efficient appliances, they'll often think of like a tankless gas water heater, not a heat pump water heater. And so there's a lack of education. And then even when people know what they have and they know about heat pumps, they often don't rush out to replace anything until it reaches the end of its life. And often when equipment reaches the end of its life, then it becomes an emergency. And so they're trying to do a replacement on the quick. So all those are challenges. And I think that the solutions are to get ahead of that, kind of intervene into that thought process. And so now we all have smartphones, and so it's really easy to take photos of equipment that's in houses. And so we can start to understand the equipment that's in a house. We can use those photos to provide grades and analysis that then make clear the choices that we're making between replacing appliances with gas appliances and all electric appliances. And the age of equipment is really important to know because you need to have some sense of, whether something's going to be need to replace in the next 3 years or whether you don't have to worry about it for 10 years. And so it's really important to know the age of equipment. And even with a mandate, that said you're prevented from replacing a gas water heater with another gas water heater, often people don't get permits. And so being able to take photos of what's going into houses and what are in houses could be really helpful for a mandate. Why are energy grades important? Because nobody understands buildings. And so grades are a really simple way to be able to inform the broader populace about the sustainability of the building stock. And it's especially important in the real estate market. They've done studies, academic research shows that people spend about 6 months a year thinking about energy. It might be a little more now, but it's not really on their radar screen. There's sort of this key opportunity when people buy a house. That's when they're thinking about the changes that they want to make to the house. And so that's a great opportunity to speak to them about sustainability and sort of changes that can be made to the energy systems in the house. The DOE has the home energy score. I know the committee is pretty familiar with the home energy score. It's required in Berkeley. It has a lot of drawbacks. I worked with it for 3 years, and I think you're familiar with a lot of those drawbacks. It was built for an earlier era. It uses PDF documents. It doesn't have a focus on electrification. There's no real deployment tools for a city. And so, Berkeley has a BASO office that has 3 or 4 people who are just working on the paperwork to administer that program. And so it's also expensive and realtors don't like it. And so it's really hard for a city, at the size of Albany to adopt a home energy score program. And I think there's a better way. I think there's just much better digital technologies that we can use to address this problem. And so that's really what House Grades is. It's a mobile first design. It's cheaper, faster, easier to deploy, and there's additional functionality. So at that, I'm going to actually stop the presentation and share with you the app itself. And the app itself is at www.housegrades.com. You can all go there if you so choose. This is the app. It's pretty simple. It talks about how it works. You put in photos, 5 photos of the house, and it gives you back an analysis and grades for what your house needs. And just to save time, I won't create an account, but it's really easy to create an account. And you go to My House, and these are the 5 photos that the app requests. One is the front of the house. That gives you the address and the year the house was built, the square footage. The top of the house, because we're interested in what the roof material is, how old the roof is, and whether there's solar on it. We ask for a photo of the attic insulation and the depth of the attic insulation so we can know whether the quality of, whether the house has been weatherized or not and what the building efficiency is. And then we ask for serial numbers for the water heater and the space heater. And that allows us to determine the type of heaters those are and the years that they were built. And so with just those 5 photos, which are really easy to collect and to upload, we can provide a whole analysis of that home's energy performance. And it includes 2 different rankings. One is a grade on the building efficiency. The building efficiency is determined by the insulation on all levels of the house and the quality of the windows and whether it's been professionally air sealed or not. And the electrification rating is determined by the equipment in the house, the water heater, the space heater, the cooking appliance, clothes dryer, and whether it has solar power. So for this house, there's 12 inches of cellulose of attic insulation. And so it scored, the recommendation in Albany is sort of an R value of 30 or higher, and 12 inches of cellulose gives you that level. And so this house scored an A in terms of building efficiency, but there are a lot of houses where there is no attic insulation. And so if you had 0 attic insulation, you would be at sort of the D level. If you had 1 to 5 inches, you would be sort of low, kind of in a C level. And if you had 6 to 10 inches, it would be a B. So that's the grading scale. For the electrification, we're concerned about just the water heater and the space heater because that's where the bulk of the emissions are. And for most homes, well, almost all homes in Albany are running on gas. And if the equipment is within kind of within its lifespan, so if a water heater is less than 10 years old, that's a C grade. If it's older than 10 years, then it needs to be replaced. And so that would be a D grade. And if it's a heat pump, either a hybrid or a pure heat pump, that would be a B or a C. And then the space heater, sort of similarly, if it's a gas furnace that's less than 15 years old, that's a C. And if it's older than 15 years old, then it's a D. So this one is 17 years old, so it needs to be replaced. And it shows the projects. So for this house, as I was saying, the attic insulation looks good. Water heater, you probably don't have to worry about until 2028, but you really should think about replacing that furnace with a heat pump. And so other sections of the site, this is sort of this explains a little bit more about the grades, which I just did kind of verbally, but if someone's coming to the site, they can read more about how the grades are calculated and the other factors that go into energy performance. Solar, electrical panel is really important if you're thinking about electrification, and also the opportunity to add an electric vehicle. And then the other advantage of having a digital platform is then if you actually, for the homeowner, once they know the quality of their assets and the age of their assets, and they know what projects they need to do, then we can actually create sort of a really easy way for them to interact with contractors and to get contracting services. And so these buttons don't work yet, but we want to have a partnership with a contractor in Albany or in the Bay Area where they can easily just order these services. And so that's one house. Now that's the perspective of the homeowner, but there's also the perspective of the administrator. And I just want to show you that for 1 second. So when someone creates a house on the House Grades platform, the administrator gets a notification, and you're able to see, as an administrator, you're basically able to see the photos that they entered and the information that they included. And so you can basically use it as a quality assurance to basically make sure that the photo matches up with the information. And you can sort of help sort things out for people if they aren't sure or made a mistake. And then if that all makes sense, there's actually a tab where you can click on to make it verified. And the verification, then when someone goes onto the analysis page, it adds a blue check mark, which shows that the information is correct or it matches the photos. And it also adds the grade sort of superimposed onto the front image of the house. And that's really important because that can then be used in a real estate context, which I want to talk about a little bit more. So we go back to the presentation. So the vision here is that really the transformative change is that we want to have all houses in Albany have an energy rating. And this app would allow sort of an easy way where you could get an energy grade for every house in Albany. And then those photos that have the energy grade included right on the front of them are something that could be required, for in a real estate context. So if you're putting your house up for sale, you can have the energy grade right on the house. And so someone who's thinking about buying a house in Albany, they're going to know, oh, this house, gets a D grade, or this house gets a C grade, or these are the improvements that need to be made to this house. And it can start to become included into something that people think about when they're thinking about real estate. And this program's it's new for the United States, but it's modeled on programs that have been operating in the European Union for a long time. In the 27 member states of the European Union, they've had required home energy grades for over a decade. And one of the things that they found is it's not only the analysis that's important, and we often get kind of caught up in all of the analytics that you can do on a building. What's really important to transform the market is the way those ratings and the way that information is communicated. And so you have to get the grades are the way that you can kind of simplify that information and get it included in the real estate market. And Ireland has been particularly successful with their program. And every house that is sold in Ireland, the front photo of the house has the building energy rating right on it. In France, it's like not only houses, it includes even apartments that get an energy rating on them. And that's particularly important for a city like Albany, where there are a lot of renters, because often the owners aren't even in, they're not, it's like they rent the place out and they don't really care about the energy performance because the renters are paying the bills, and it's like, they're just not concerned with it. So if you have an energy rating, then suddenly like someone who's renting a house or renting an apartment understands like how that house is going to perform relative to other houses, and they can make an informed decision about it. And it gives the owner an incentive to make improvements. So we think the app has a lot of benefits. It's a much more simple process for a homeowner. It's available 24/7 to use the app. You don't have to make an appointment with a contractor, and you don't have to have somebody come to your house to do an assessment. You get immediate feedback on the app. You get the analysis right up front. It's a remote QA process, so the QA is a lot easier, and it's similar actually to what the home energy score does in a whole different way, but they have like a really convoluted way of doing it. And there's clear analysis and recommendations that are specifically support electrification and hopefully real-time prices with contractors. For a city like Albany, I think this would be preferable than the home energy score. You would get a direct relationship with us in terms of developing the program, and it would really be a lot less staff time required for maintenance and compliance on the program. And we're particularly really excited about what realtors would do with a program like this, because realtors often have a lot of control over what gets shared about houses in the real estate market. And they typically don't like the home energy score because they think it's expensive and it doesn't really provide any new information. And a service like this, where it's just taking 5 photos, that's something that they could provide for their clients. And it would be really easy for them to do that. So I have a couple other slides, but I maybe I'll stop there and take questions. But HouseGrades is ready to be deployed, and a partnership with Albany would be ideal. And we'd love to find a way to work with you in some capacity.
Great, thank you, North. Does anybody on the committee have any? We'll start with questions from the committee, then we'll go to, I believe, to public comment and then back to discussion. So it looks like Committee Member Peterson, you want to go first?
Yeah, I have a quick question. The example home you did, there was just one aspect of its construction that was pretty good, and that led to an A grade, but there was no information on walls, windows, those were all not rated. Wouldn't you want that factored in too? I mean, if there's a house that's redone all its windows and put wall insulation and is all sealed up and has the attic insulation, it should be an A. And that house we saw should be more like a C if it hasn't done that. So I'm just a little worried about how you attain a grade if you don't give all the information.
Yeah, I think over time we'd have to do more user testing to find out how much information we can ask from users. We want to get enough information to be able to do an analysis that is helpful to people and not overwhelm them with questions. Like, for example, wall insulation. No one really insulates walls in Albany, and most walls are maybe you did, but it's pretty rare. And floor insulation is sort of nice to have, but the economics of doing that project don't have the same payback as attic insulation. All the windows, if you have an old house, depending on the year your house was built, you either have single pane windows or double pane windows. But if you have single pane windows, replacing them with double pane windows is very expensive, and so it doesn't pay back from an energy perspective. And so we've just stayed laser focused on sort of the project that matters to start with, although there's room for all of those complexities to be added.
North, do you mind stopping screen share? I think it just makes it easier for everyone to see each other. Great, thank you.
Great. Committee Member Larson.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. That was really interesting. And I agree, having an app this kind of way would make it a lot easier. How have the countries who've had gotten good adoption on this kind of thing, how have they gotten over that sort of negative stigma that like homeowners and realtors both have sort of a negative, I think, a negative stigma about rating a house, and thinking that it'll drop the value or make it unattractive. How do you get over that hump to make it something that people want to participate in?
Well, Europe has a very different political environment than the United States. And the first grades were started in Denmark, and the program was successful in Denmark in the late 70s. And so it was successful in Denmark in the 70s, and then it started to take on with other countries in the 90s. And so it's been around for a long time. They've been working on it for a long time. It didn't become mandatory in the whole European Union until 2006. And they did that because they recognized that you cannot get to zero carbon emissions unless you address buildings. And the best way to address buildings is, the number one step for addressing buildings is collecting the information on those buildings and trying to determine which ones, perform well and which ones don't. So it's not something that realtors would ever volunteer to do. It's something that kind of has to be forced. Portland, Oregon is the other city in addition to Berkeley that has a home energy score program. And if you talk to the people at the city of Portland, they basically just, had to kind of force the real estate community to come along with them. It's hard. It's hard to get the realtors on board.
Committee Member Mira Venkatesh, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, thank you so much. I had two short questions. So number one, have you done any sort of customer discovery or interviews prior to creating this application? And if so, what's some of the high-level feedback you've received from people? And number two, is there any way you can sort of bundle in the home rating with the real estate value? That way could potentially create an incentive for individuals who want their home value to appreciate or something along those lines, something that isn't purely environmental or moral.
Yeah, we've been working with, obviously I did home energy scores for 3 years. And so I have a list of 250 homeowners that I've worked with directly on the home energy score. And house grades sort of solve all of the problems of the home energy score. It's faster, it's less expensive, it's easier. You can just take the photos with your phone and upload them. And so people really like the convenience of that. And they also like getting the information from contractors without actually having to interact with contractors. That's something that is really nice, because just trying to, pick up a phone book and call a bunch of contractors and get them to tell you what their prices are, just takes a lot of work. And only really the hardcore dedicated people, are able to make the improvements. And they often write blogs about it because they say, this is so difficult. I don't understand how we're going to do this. So by having all that information on a digital platform, it solves a lot of problems. And then talking about the real estate value, right now, like 100%, near 100% of homes in Albany are on fossil fuels. And so there is very poor differentiation among, houses that are all electric versus houses that are on fossil fuels. I think with the new breach codes, when you start to get more new construction that are like zero energy homes, homes that have no energy bills or very low energy bills, then all of a sudden there'll be differentiation in the real estate market. But that's going to take like a couple of years to work its way out. But even still, like you need to have the grades to inform the real estate market about the energy differences between an all-electric home and a fossil fuel-based home, in order for the prices to start to reflect those realities.
Committee Member Peterson, we can go back to you. I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. So just for committee members who weren't around when we did the pilot project on building energy score, we had made a recommendation which started at least 3 years ago to City Council that every house sold in Albany should follow similar to what Berkeley did with their building energy score program, or BESO. And our pilot, it got sort of bogged down in what North has mentioned is the complexity of the DOE building energy score. And what we really found was that the 4 or 5, I think we did 4 or 5 houses. And, even if you listed the score, it was a bit difficult to understand what that meant. And even if you implemented some of the actions, it didn't really change the score for some reason. And this was all because of and it didn't have anything to do with electrification at all. So you could have a house that had a gas furnace and it would get a great score, and there was really nothing to do to make it better. And so it wasn't really addressing what we wanted to address at all. So I think we dropped the whole thing. We didn't bring it back up. We stopped studying it. Meanwhile, we have this point of sale. Houses have gone from at that time about 650,000 each to, pushing $2 million a piece now. So you have young families. I have one just move across the street from me. They're paying $1.5 million for a house that has single glazed windows, isn't very energy efficient, but it has it has the all new gas fired cooktop in stainless steel and all that stuff, all the glitzy stuff that, the real estate agents know is bling to make the price go up. But it's an energy dog, and it has nothing to do with, and it has no reference to electrification. Those people paid an extra $400,000 above asking to get that house. Some of that money should go to making the house a good performer. At the point of sale is an opportune time to do that. And the real estate agents don't want anything to do that. But anyway, I think this is a great idea, and I think we should put it on our future agenda for implementing this. I think it's great.
That context is super helpful. I don't want to get too far into the discussion since we haven't had the public comment yet, but I really, really appreciate that context. Committee Member Larson, did you have any other questions before we move to public comment?
Just another question about, you touched on the contractors part of it. Is that, I think that's a real key part of doing this kind of thing. What is your relationship with contractors? How does that, how do you get people signed up for that, or what part of your business plan is that?
Yeah, I know all the contractors in the Bay Area from having worked with them for 3 years. So, All Things Good is in Albany. There's Eco Performance Builders. There's SDI, is the largest insulation crew in the Bay Area. There's McHale's. All of them are sort of eager. As Larry Waters is now he renamed his shop Electrify Your Home. I know all the contractors. They're all eager to work on electrification projects, and they would love to have a direct source of referrals for projects. And so we just at this point we just need to get more people excited about electrification, excited about heat pump water heaters, excited about heat pumps, and the contractors are ready and willing to go in and to do those installs. And I think that by having this platform that will basically help people understand the things that they have and the timeline for the improvements that they need to make, that'll help sort of create this funnel of getting more projects happening.
Great, thank you, North. Do any of the committee members have any more questions before we move to public comment? I don't see any hands. Okay, so we're going to open it up to any members of the public. I see we have one hand raised, two hands raised. So if we could get those people queued up, please, Lizzie, thank you.
Yes. David?
Can I ask a few questions and get answers, or all I can do is make comments and that's it?
You can ask questions, and then if it is appropriate, we can answer them after your comment concludes.
Okay. So take notes. One is there a cost to the city to use this program, or is this free to the city? And and the app makes their money elsewhere, or they have their own grants? I'm just wondering what's the cost to the city or the public. Comment about does this bring value to or does it change the pricing of homes for sale? And I think I see this similar to like the walkability scores that you now see when you're selling houses. And probably at the time when somebody said, hey, let's invent this walkability score, they probably took 50 years to get that approved, right? No great idea goes unpunished. So so I kind of see I see it's analogous to that, and it's worth just getting this out there and getting into people's consciousness. And then when it comes to the contractor services, I like the idea of making it easy for people to contact contractors. But I would not want as a default that the contractors can reach out and to people who are using the app. If people want to contact contractors, they should control that communication. I'd hate to have people say, hey, gosh, I signed up for this thing and now I'm getting phone calls about my expired car warranty. Calls constantly by all these guys, and they're giving me emails and junk mails, and so I don't want to protect homeowners from that kind of thing. And then I kind of agree with the previous comment about what about some of these other energy items, like I think it's important. I would hope it's important that part of the score would be do you have a gas stove, or do you currently have a induction stove? And what was the other one? The clothes dryer. I'm surprised double pane windows don't give you more bang for your buck than what you alluded to, because I sure spent a heck of a lot of money on my previous house doing the right thing. But and I think I got a lot of bang for my buck as far as energy savings and then resale value. And I think that is it.
Great. Thank you so much, David. I think we have two more hands raised, so let's go through all of the comments before we move back to discussion.
Okay. Lucinda?
You hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I just had a brief comment. Unfortunately, I didn't get to hear all of North's discussion because I had another meeting I had to step out. But I really support the point of service or point of sale, having some requirements on the point of sale. And when North said we really want to get people excited about electrification, I think one of the ways to do that, have some rebates. Hey, use some of this DD money to make some rebates and things available to help people get excited about electrification. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe we have one more hand raised, Ken.
Yes. Ken?
Hi there, Ken McCroskey, Albany resident. Thanks for the presentation. I would say that it would have been great if the URL for the tool had been announced ahead of the meeting, so that I could have had a chance to take a look at it ahead of time. But having just seen the presentation, it looks like a good tool, and having any kind of rating is going to help people think about the whole situation. I support making the tool available to residents and requiring it at around the point of sale. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
This time there are no other members of the public with their hand raised.
Great, so now we can move on to discussion among the committee members. Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, I wonder if we wanted to give North a chance to respond to some, at least the questions that David raised, if he could do that first.
Yes, and I took notes on those if you need a refresher on any of those, North.
I might.
Okay, the first was,
I'm happy to, if I miss anything, I'm always happy. You can email me at north@housegrades.com and I can respond to any individual questions that way too.
Great. Well, I think the first was, what would the cost be to the city?
I think for the pilot, it's free. We're just trying to get a sense of like, can Albany users, Albany homeowners, what's their experience like doing this? Do they upload the 5 photos? Do they find the analysis useful? We're trying to refine the tool, and Albany is like the perfect city to do it. So, I'd be excited to just, get it out there and do like 20, or I think I said 100 homes in the presentation, but it could be, less than that, just to try it out.
Great. And then if there's any evidence that this brings like increased value to homes by having the scores associated with them, if I think I understood that question.
What the realtors always say is this is a crazy housing market. Anyone who's trying to buy a house in the Bay Area is lucky to get one, and they're probably going to have to bid like crazy. And we're talking, like Nick said, now houses, it's not uncommon to the house can be $2 million. It's just kind of crazy. And so they always say like energy, like no one, that's not going to move the needle. And but I don't think that's necessarily true. And the DOE has done a bunch of research on green ratings, different kinds of green ratings, and they do show that homes that are more sustainable do have a price premium in a normalized housing market. So I do think that if you have a standard that everybody knows about and gets, then you will start to see real differentiation over time.
Great, thank you. And I have to say, I do agree with David's comment that that I wouldn't want to see that the contractors would be allowed to use this to directly outreach and market to the participants. So just wanted to get clarification on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, all of the data would be totally private and confidential, and the clicks would work one way, which would be, would allow the homeowner to contact the contractor, but the contractor couldn't go, contact the homeowners.
Okay.
So yeah, that's been built in.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Are we able to proceed?
Recording in progress.
Committee Member Peterson, your hand is still raised. Did you want to pick back up?
Yeah, so obviously a pilot project is a great idea. I think that's really good. There are a lot of questions with this. The thing I'm a little worried about is if we bring in sort of sales, advertising related almost issues like having contractors' names and whatever, we have to be very fair about that and unbiased. The city can't be feeding projects to specific contractors. And I think actually there's an opportunity there to educate and bring in Albany businesses and I know there are electricians in Albany and other plumbers and other people that probably would be very interested in this, and that we actually prioritize that to help Albany businesses. Although we want Albany customers to have, real value and be able to get competitive pricing. So I think there's a way within the pilot project to kind of work on that. So I guess my question now is, after the pilot, what do you foresee? I mean, is there a subscription then? The city pays a subscription, or then is it all sort of financed out of the success of working with contractors, or would there be a fee for just every homeowner that then did the evaluation, or all models? I mean, I'm kind of curious.
I mean, to be honest, I'm kind of like open-minded about it, and I would just be excited to work with Albany on it. Obviously, there's some time and cost involved, depending on how we would structure it. There could be time and resources involved in it, but it kind of depends on the scope of the project and how it was defined. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure.
Committee Member Mira Venkatesh.
So I just have a logistical question. So I believe your presentation said that you wanted 600 houses for the pilot. Is that correct? 100?
Yeah.
So okay, that's good. So what I would say is I'm also curious, and this is coming from my renter's perspective, if there's any way, because a lot of, as you said, there are lots of renters in Albany, whether this could potentially be a tool to get renters who are climate conscious or who want more energy efficient homes, to get buy-in from their homeowners or their landlords, whether there's a way to either structure the pilot or sell the pilot or sell the app in that way. Do you think that it could be a point of negotiation? I would just like to hear your opinion.
I'd have to think about it. Based on my experience, often owners are less inclined to make improvements for their renters. So it tends to be a more difficult ask. But that said, the renters tend to be the students, and the students care about climate change. And it may be good that the renters are engaging with their landlords that way. So I don't know. I'd have to think about it, but it could be interesting. Yeah.
Committee Member Larson.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little unclear on what the ask actually is. What would the city actually do or pay for? I mean, your app is for homeowners to use or renters to use to evaluate their homes, right? What would the city do in this scenario?
Well, we want to work towards a mandate, so that the only way the grades work is if the city commits to requiring the point of sale. And so we want to take steps toward making the grades mandatory at point of sale. And how we go about doing that, sort of proving out the concept and then getting everyone comfortable that like makes sense to do. I'm sort of like, it remains to be determined. But the ask is, does Albany want to have mandatory energy grades? And can we help you do that?
Okay, thanks.
Committee Member Peterson.
Yeah, I don't know how long we want to continue this, but I think this is, thank you, North. This was a really good tool. I like the idea that it's easy, that it sort of idealizes things, but focuses on electrification, which is really the goal of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. I mean, making every house perfect as an energy efficiency performer is kind of a big lift, but getting things moved over to electrical power is also a big lift, but gets people to think about it. So I think there's some advantages to having a program like this. I think we should study it more, and my suggestion would be that and we could do this later at future business or however you want to do it, but I would like to at this point sort of suggest we form a subcommittee to pursue this further as taking up and moving forward with almost like a BEDO or a BESO type ordinance that would require point of sale use of a tool like this, and how you would implement that. Obviously, you don't dump it on people right away. We have to do outreach. We have to talk to the real estate community. There's all sorts of things we need to do. But I think it's worth saying, let's move ahead and plan on it if other committee members agree with that.
I'll chime in to say that I agree. And I think the number of questions, follow-up questions that we have, we haven't turned to just a discussion of whether we want to implement it as a pilot program, but just a lot of questions about how it would actually be structured and what our ultimate goals are. So I would second your suggestion, Committee Member Peterson, we form a subcommittee to do kind of a deeper dive into what this would look like. Do we need to do that by motion? Lizzie, to officially form a subcommittee?
Yes.
Okay. So is that an official motion to form a subcommittee, committee member?
Yeah, so I would just what I said before, motion, I didn't realize we could do that during presentation, so that's great. I'd make a motion, and this is assuming that discussion is over. I don't want to keep someone from commenting, but I make a motion that we implement a subcommittee to look into using the house grade app or implementing the house grade app pilot project so that we can develop some sort of point of sale incentive to electrify building homes in Albany.
Before someone seconds that, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the concept. This subcommittee would be further exploring how this would work in Albany in order to create a proposal that then the CAC as a whole would recommend to the city council. I just want to make sure that's clear, that would be.
Yeah.
Council would
I think
approve a proposal.
right. So at this point, the way I phrase it, it's just we're going to investigate it with the idea that we want to implement something like that. So obviously the subcommittee would have to talk further with North and get a better idea, and then bring those ideas back, get more feedback. We have to be a little bit worried about city issues. We probably need to get some input from the city attorney, and staff could help with that too. So, again, it may be a couple sessions of meeting before it's not like next time we're going to come back and then throw this at the city council, although it'd be nice to do something relatively quickly. So, time is of essence with all of the actions that we're trying to take.
What do you want your subcommittee to be called for the motion? I think it should be something general. I don't think it should be the name of this specific program, just because we're technically not allowed to endorse things. So.
Yeah, so why don't we just say it would be a point of sale electrification mandate subcommittee. That leaves it broad enough that we might even look at other things besides just use of the app.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Would anyone like to second it?
I can second it. I second the motion to form the subcommittee.
Thank you. Could we please have a vote?
Before we vote, who are we voting into this subcommittee?
Does this the seconding forms it, and then we just have to vote people into it?
And I guess you can make the motion first. I want to make sure that we have committee members in the subcommittee before we form it.
Okay.
Anyone who's interested, raise your hand.
I see Committee Member Peterson, Committee Member Meera Venkatesh.
If anybody else wants to join in later, we can allow that. We can have up to 3.
All right, we have a motion. I'll do a roll call vote. All right, Committee Member Breeding.
Aye.
Committee Member Fasoon.
Aye.
Committee Member Larson.
Aye.
Committee Member Peterson.
Aye.
Committee Member Meera Venkatesh.
Aye.
Vice Chair Merchant.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Okay.
Oh, great. I think, Nora, thank you so much for your time and for all the information and for fielding our many questions. So I think we are now, I believe, ready to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 4-2, which is a presentation on climate-related staffing and department structure. So I guess that means at this point we'll say goodbye to you, North. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, North.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. Jeff Vaughn, the Community Development Director. I am going to open up a second screen for a second here. So bear with me so I can share my screen briefly. So I believe this came about several meetings ago. There was some interest in talking a little bit about how our department is organized and support the work of the committee. So I've got two slides here that I'd like to show. The first is a real quick overview of the city as a whole and where we fit into it in the community development department, and then kind of go into more detail into what we do in community development. For some of you who've been involved in city politics and operations for a while, this is old news. But for some of you who are relatively new to municipal government, this is a real quick overview, and of course, be happy to answer any questions. We're a city manager form of government, a local government, which means all city staff report to the city manager, and the city manager reports directly to the city council. In larger cities like San Francisco or Los Angeles, or in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose, it's what's referred to as a strong mayor form of government, where someone like in my position as department head would report directly to the mayor of the city. We don't do that here. So my reporting relationship is to the city manager. And every once in a while, you may hear us remind you if you're directing us to do one thing or another thing. We're always happy to hear that, but it's really the city manager who tells us what we're going to work on and what we're going to prioritize. So sometimes our response is, thank you very much. We'll check with the city manager. So our city has, as you can see, 6 major departments. It's a full service city. So we have a public works department, a fire department, police department, recreation and community services department, and then a finance and administration department that kind of keeps the operation running. We also have a city attorney. She's a contract city attorney, works for a relatively large firm that specializes in municipal government. And Mala, she also is hired directly by the city council, and she represents the organization in all legal matters. The next slide here shows a little bit more about how we're organized, and this incorporates some changes that we've made over the last, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 months or so, and building a little bit more structure into our department. We're a group of basically 10 people, and we've organized it into 3 buckets, if you will. There's the first, which is, as you can see on the screen, planning and building. This is the traditional role of community development departments, and it's the bread and butter of what community development departments do. Building permit applications, planning applications, general plans, those kinds of things are in the planning and building department, and Hirsch is our planning manager and leads that effort for us. We have a building inspector, a permit technician, and a contract plan checker, a person who is, they're based in Santa Rosa, that actually reviews some of the more complicated and detailed plans that are submitted to us, and make sure that all the work is compliant with various codes, including as we adopt and refine our green building requirements. Michelle in particular has been the person who's coordinating with our plan checker. And I will say that the way community development is organized, we're really very kind of by nature a very collaborative group. So we don't sit in these little silos and never talk to each other. We're wandering around every day, talking to each other, working with each other on different things. But I just wanted to kind of, I think some organizational structure is sometimes helpful to keep us all in working towards the same objectives. The second group is this transportation and energy, and this is what's new over the last, as I mentioned, 8 or 10 months, is really bringing together both climate action community types of activities and transportation into one group of people. And Justin Freed, our transportation manager, is leading that effort. And so within that group, everyone that's here on this meeting today is part of that team. And so I think this is really important, and it's kind of obvious why it's important. I don't need to spend a lot of time with this committee on why we're doing it, but in many cities, the transportation people are just off doing their transportation thing, and they're not thinking about anything else. They're certainly not thinking much about climate action related policies and initiatives. In Albany, that's not the case. And a lot of what you want to accomplish in the Climate Action Committee is going to happen on our city's roadways in terms of types of vehicles and parking and so forth. So, and alternative modes of transportation, of course. So integrating this together, I think, is really good in that it kind of deepens the roots of some of these policy initiatives that you want to get, and getting it deeper into all the day-to-day activities of what we do in the department. So within transportation and energy, it's not only the climate action plan, but also active transportation plan implementation. Our department does not all, but probably a majority of the project planning for many of the capital improvement projects. So certainly in the transportation world, you'll see our department taking things to the Transportation Commission, perhaps with the collaboration of someone in the Public Works Department. And once it kind of gets through the planning phase, it makes a transition over to the staff in Public Works for the technical work and for the construction management. Then finally, it's the last box there on the bottom, roadway safety and traffic calming is probably a little bit less climate action related, although we certainly need safe roadways and calm traffic to make people feel comfortable about walking and riding their bicycle and so forth. So there is some relationship. And the third box, and then I'm going to come back to this middle one in a minute, but just to finish the overall organizational structure, is a little bit of a catch-all. And again, all of us work on this together in a collaborative manner, but it's kind of labeled more than it could have a lot of different names, but for today's purposes, environment and resilience, our office does all the planning for, or almost all of the planning for creeks and the Bay waterfront. We also do, in collaboration, particularly with the fire department, do disaster resilience planning. We prepared the hazard mitigation plan a few years ago. We'll be preparing the next one again here in a year or two. We also have an important role to play in Emergency Operations Center in the event of a disaster. We're leading the city's work in managing waste recycling and composting programs. That's a major work effort right now. We're going through a transition. Our agreement with Waste Management is coming to a close soon, as well as significant new state laws. SB 1383 is in particular is changing that world quite a bit. Last two, affordable housing. We're the department that's leading the planning and implementation of the city's first major affordable housing project in town, on the west side of town at Cleveland, Washington. And then occasionally random things end up in our department, and the Community Development Block Grant Program is one of those where we staff in collaboration with some other cities, a joint Community Development Block Grant Program. I'm going to stop the screen share for a second, and maybe I'll just pause here and see if you have any questions or you'd like me to go into more detail. I would like to mention that with this change, you're going to be seeing a lot more of Justin Freed as he makes this transition into managing the entire group, and you might be seeing a little bit less of me. That doesn't mean that I care less about climate change than I used to. I think it's important that both for perspective of building capacity within our department and providing professional development opportunities for Justin and others, that sometimes I just step away and let other people take the lead so that we grow capacity throughout the organization, throughout the department. But I will always be interested in what you're doing, even though I may not be coming to every meeting or may not be staying through an entire meeting as I have been in recent months. And I will say there was a couple of years ago, I went through this cycle again. There was some staffing changes and I stepped away for a little while. And I think that was a really good thing to do for the staff that were there, Claire Griffin in particular. It gave her an opportunity to develop professionally. And so I'm anxious to do that again. So again, I'm sorry, I will pause here for any questions and look forward to any public comments if there will be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I see Committee Member Peterson has his hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I mean, that's really makes me feel a little more reassured. Being on the Climate Action Committee and having worked with Claire for a while, it always seemed, it was Claire and the Civic Spark people that were really working on the stuff that we were really focused on. And it just seemed like, 2 or 3 people handling something as significant as all the climate action plan items was really expecting a lot out of a few people. So it sounds like, if I understand you right, the climate action plan actions are actually scattered across the 3 different, I see there's resilience in one, there's climate actions in another, there's traffic issues, and then they're planning and other building code issues. So in some sense, we have the full component of community development staff working on this plan at some point or another, which is really good to hear. I think what might be helpful is to take that concept and then we can start to see which, how much time we think is going to take to hit some milestones. I'm thinking of the comments that were made during public comment session where someone suggested, how can we keep people appraised? And I think it's important to do that because I think there's sort of this attitude. I get this sense mainly because it's hard to get, at least in my experience, and maybe I'm not very good at convincing my fellow citizens to get involved, but it seems like there's this view that the city is just going to take care of this and they're going to do something and we're all going to be net zero by 2045. And I think it would be good to actually break down that goal is too far away. Even the 2035 goal, 70% emissions reductions, too far away. We need goals that and timelines and sort of milestone achievements sooner than that. So I'm wondering if there's been a look at maybe your level or at the group heads talking about, what are the milestones we're going for say the next 2 years, like we did in our work plan, and what do we need to accomplish in order to keep this thing on track? And it may be it's too ambitious, but at least then we have some idea that maybe we need some more assistance or need to get more grants or something. And no one's ever really established a budget for the whole climate action adaptation plan. And I got a little nervous recently when I saw that Ann Arbor, who's, it's a city probably pushing 8 or 10 times bigger than us, but they have a $4 billion budget established for over the next 5 or 10 years to accomplish their climate action plan. So if we're working on this, we should know how to get there.
Well, your comment about your comment about all of us in the department are working on some of this stuff is absolutely true. And, rolling out, to use recent example of Michelle's work on the green building, I think she's talked to every single person in the department in one capacity or another about preparing the information, getting it out, getting it on the web, getting the forms working right. I can't think of anybody she hasn't talked to about it off the top of my head. So it is very much integrated. In terms of, how do we prioritize those things? Those are discussions I have with the city manager all the time. We have them as a group with Justin and Ann and well, everybody really, but particularly Justin, Ann and I get together and talk about that. And often with Lizzie and Michelle as well. We're kind of, what can we do next? When can we do it? We refer to the climate action plan all the time. I think that's really the key document for us. We're not using any of our own reference materials that are somehow not available to the public. That's the key document. That the prioritization either comes from what we're hearing from you, or what we're hearing from the city manager, or what we're hearing from the city council that comes through the city manager. I think your work plan is as good as a place as any that will be referring to over the next couple of years that it's in place to help prioritize what we're going to work on. You know, it will evolve, of course, because new things will come along and other things we'll find out that aren't working the way that we thought we would. So we'll try something else. We're pretty dynamic and flexible in how we do this.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Any other committee members have any questions? I don't see any hands raised, so we could go to the members of the public now and see if there's any public comment. I see a couple of hands raised. So if we could get the timer queued up, Lizzie, please.
Yep. Michelle? Jeremiah?
Yeah, hey, everybody. I just popped in this meeting. Sorry I'm late. I don't even know what agenda item we're on. Can you let me know what agenda item we are, please?
We are on agenda item 5-2. It's a presentation on climate-related staffing.
Okay, climate-related staffing. Well, I just got one thing to say. I don't know if you got my emails or the pictures over here at the Port of Oakland. I sent you earlier this evening. Every ship that pulls in here, these emissions are terrible. You can see in the pictures I sent you, they're supposed to be on shore power within 4 hours, but half the time they're not. And nobody's really keeping track of this. Air quality control is supposed to, but they're not here all the time. So climate action staffing, we got to put someone on staff to get rid of all the emissions over here at the Port of Oakland and get this organized. Because just to let you know, every single truck and tractor, and they're called top picks and side picks and transtainers, they all run on diesel and they are not smogged because this is all private property. They don't follow under smog regulations. And I have quotes directly from the mechanics telling me that absolutely none of these would pass smog. This is a terrible situation, especially on private property. The loophole to where they don't have to have smog requirements. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Looks like we have another hand raised. David.
David?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I just follow up on member Peterson's comments. I was the one that made the earlier comments about, it'd be nice like to have a more detailed, implementation plan developed for the CAAP, which would, state goals, state the final, milestone completion date and important intermediate milestones. And so as a citizen, maybe, I could go to, a city dashboard of the CAAP and I could, see, what the staff milestone are working on for the various, measures or mitigations that, as part of the plan we're working on. I've been surfing around. I've spent some time over on the City of Boulder website and seeing what they're doing as a city, and they have some excellent dashboard and metrics and graphics that show progress and goals and such. So so that's kind of my comment. And so I understand, was it last week, a week before, council passed the pilot program for 5 EV stations. It'd be nice to have, maybe that would be a, start to a dashboard, starting project, when do we expect to have, those 5 EV stations installed, and, what are a couple of intermediate milestones to get to that. And, so as a citizen, I could go and I could see, and maybe monthly or quarterly, there would be an update on progress made or, issues that have come up and et cetera. But, I think, it'd be nice for information and accountability that, we can, have some better communication tools for the public. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment, David. I don't see any other hands raised among the participants. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay, so I think we can now move on to discussion of this agenda item. Maybe there's nothing to discuss other than the questions that we had directly for Jeff, but Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, so again, maybe I think all of us would benefit with some idea of how the continuum of what we're trying to do will come about. And what I get worried about is that we get in a mode of doing just kind of as much as we can, and that's kind of good enough. And these critical next 5 years where it's really meaningful to get something done, we don't quite hit goals, or we end up at that point, we kind of look at it and it is rather tricky to even measure and know. That's the other thing is, getting the data of how we're succeeding at this is, we don't want to spend huge chunks of time just trying to collect data either. So anyway, it would be nice to have some sort of way of knowing we've implemented these actions, we've gotten this result. For example, like if we want to do, with this thing that North just explained, we want a certain number of homes being converted over to all electric homes. Well, how many are achieving that? Albany has, I don't know how many housing units, 7,000 or something. And, if we were just going to draw a straight line and do the conversion, certain hundreds of them need to happen every year. And, if we're only achieving 5 or 6, then, we're pushing everything off until later to do that. So I kind of like the idea of having a more, and maybe we just take the plan and look at it in a little more detail. And I think that must be happening, and just getting, I would love to have my head more wrapped around how we're getting to the goals of at 10, in 10 years and 15 years. It seems a long ways away, but they're really aggressive and quite challenging goals.
I can quickly share on the topic of tracking progress. Michelle did an excellent presentation. Remind me what month that was, Michelle? Sometime in the spring on an analysis. Oh, go ahead.
I think it was April, but I can double check.
Yeah, either March or April, an analysis of our key performance indicators that are some of those target numbers we're trying to annually check on how we're doing to measure progress. We've moved away from the greenhouse gas emissions inventory approach just because it was very time intensive for a small agency. There's a chance that greenhouse gas emissions inventories will be taken on either regionally or by the state, but as our climate action plan says, we're tracking key performance indicators annually, and we'll provide updates to the Climate Action Committee. So just sharing that reminder that annually this committee can expect a KPI presentation and an update on status of CAP implementation.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's great to kind of see what we've done, but how does that fit into what we need to do? And are we getting there on schedule? I think that's more what I'm driving at.
I think we had a discussion when we were looking at the KPIs this year of, okay, here's where we are, here's what we want to focus on moving forward. And I anticipate that that's the approach we'll have to those conversations moving forward as well. I don't think the reason we don't want to spend a bunch of time and resources into tracking how we've done is because we want to free up time and resources to continue making progress moving forward. So I think inherent in those discussions of where are we, we'll talk about where are we going.
You know, if I may just build on that for a second, you know, maybe when we present those kinds of things like the key performance indicators or other presentators or climate action plan reviews, we're just a little bit more deliberate about saying this is your opportunity to think about that next 10-year trajectory. And so we're just, rather than just saying here it is, we'll just try to be more deliberate about it. So it's more obvious that these are the tools that we can use to make those assessments. And if priorities need to be shifted around and advocacy needs to be done at the city council level, you've got the tools to do it.
I think that I was actually looking for Michelle's presentation to prepare for the forum for tomorrow night, and it took me a while to find it. So I just wondered, it might also be a matter of making those materials more available. So any community members who are looking to see where we're at and how well we're performing against our goals, it's more that we have maybe a landing page or someplace that it's more easily accessible if it's something that we're going to be having every year. Both our work plan and also the KPI reports. I know the work plan is on the committee's website, but having the progress statements as well, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, Michelle and I can chat further about adding a link to that presentation to our existing CAP page.
Yeah, I think that's good. So, sorry, I'm still kind of processing what you told me. So I'm not interested in having staff spend a lot of time putting together charts and graphs on what we've done. What I'm more concerned about is, take, for example, when we were talking about the EV action plan, when we call it the EV action plan, not the zero emission transportation plan. We had a graph that showed how EV adoption would have to progress in Albany in order to meet our 2045 goal. That means certain things, which maybe we can incentivize. And we're looking into that with this pilot project. But we still have these milestones. A certain percentage of cars need to turn over within this time frame. And you know, I don't understand how we're evaluating what effort is going to be required or what tools, or do we need to start thinking about implementing even parking management or restrictions in order to force people to make these kind of changes? I mean, it's hard to know if these things are going to be successful and meet the schedule if we don't kind of look at what kind of acceleration do we need, what needs to happen. So I'm thinking of it more as a high overview of what needs to happen, and then bringing that back and looking at, okay, can we achieve that or is that really a huge lift, and we need to have some other tools or grants or some more funding or bodies or something to make it happen. I don't have a good sense right now as a member of the committee that our efforts are going to meet our goals. I don't have I like to remain optimistic and think we're doing good things, but again, looking at the participation in carbon-free Albany, looking at how long it has taken to not get 5 EV charge stations installed in the city. I just, rather than trying to do things and then every year giving a report on what happened, I think we should look at what needs to be done and whether it's even possible with the resources we have. That's what I'm worried about.
I think that is something that is really hard to plan for. Our climate action plan identifies all the actions we want to do by 2045, but I think if we were to assign specific years and to every single action, it wouldn't necessarily mean that we would follow that prescriptive. We can only be so prescriptive, I think, with a plan of this scope. So I completely hear what you're saying. You want to be able to see annually, are we on track to meet our interim goals? And I think we will have to do, that's not what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is, have we looked at what it will take to implement this as best as we know now? I mean, when we kicked all this off, and what the Climate Action Committee has been doing when we started with Claire, is it was, well, prioritize something, pick 3 things. We did, and we're moving ahead on that. I don't think picking 3 things and then just focusing on them is a plan for how you're going to get everything done, how we're going to achieve success of meeting the goals. I think it would be looking at all areas and looking at the effort that's required, where the hurdles are, and having some understanding of that. And maybe there's some early implementation of, I mean, some of the stuff you can't just make a law that says, you know, in 2030 that everyone has to rip out their furnace and put in a heat pump. I mean, just because that's what it'll take to meet that. There needs to be we need to at least understand what's the rate of change. What is the hill we're trying to climb? And then, you know, and I think we did that when we looked at EVs, and it was pretty surprising. And there was a lot of hopeful thoughts about, well, maybe there'll be state mandates and other things that'll implement this a bit farther, and the market will catch up and all that kind of stuff. But maybe there's some other things that we could, you know, start to gradually initiate that then people won't rebel against, or we can at least do community outreach and inform people more of what's coming and how soon it's coming. That's what I'm thinking. It's kind of a high level look of the effort that we need to do, and do we have the resources? You know, are there any gaps that we might want to start making city council member aware of, and looking for more methods to address those. That's what I'm kind of worried about.
Well, let us brainstorm. I think I understand what you're asking for, Committee Member Peterson. Let us brainstorm a little bit with how we can provide that for you, and you know, maybe we can bring this back for a follow-up or phase 2 of how, not just how we're organized, but how we need to, and you know, maybe it's not just the community development department, but how the city needs to organize itself. I mean, many of these challenges are to reach that goal are very, very significant. And can we do it with what we have today? Probably not, or no, certainly not. We probably need a lot of action at the state and federal level governments and so forth. But I think I hear what you're saying, and I think I'd like to just kick it around with our team a little bit and bring it back to you in a month or two with some ideas of how to illustrate that.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I know you guys have a lot on your plate, and you know, I've been in situations where you just get your head down and you go. But I think maybe having a little bit of time to do kind of a high level view and say, oh, you know, and I think we know the big issues are the building electrification and the transportation emissions. You know, all the other little tiny things we can kind of, you know, even city, you know, converting all the city buildings. I mean, that's something that is within city control, and they can look at that and maybe put some numbers on it. But yeah, I think that would be helpful for all of us. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to item number 5-1. Possible amendment to resolution number 2020-127, a resolution of the Albany City Council to adopt green building measures.
Thank you, Vice Chair Merchant. And I'll be giving a presentation to you all. Like Vice Chair Merchant said, about a potential update to our current green building requirements. And we'll just start with a little bit of background. So Cal Green is the name of the green building code for California. It has a huge variety of requirements for all buildings across the state relating to everything to do with how they impact the environment. And there are also 2 voluntary tiers, which have kind of a menu of measures that a single building could take to, increase their sustainability, or a city could adopt to require all buildings to follow. And last year, the Climate Action Committee created a subcommittee working with staff to develop a green building proposal based on those tiers, and basically selecting the measures from that menu that they thought were most beneficial for the city. So the Climate Action Committee as a whole recommended that proposal in September of 2020, and then it was adopted by the City Council in January of this year as that resolution 2020-127 in our title. And then it was approved by the California Energy Commission in May of 2021. That approval is required to make it legally enforceable. And so now we've started to implement it with some of our first projects that are coming through the pipeline. And I won't go into a lot of detail about exactly what's in the resolution currently, but this just kind of gives you a high-level overview. There's a variety of measures, both residential and non-residential buildings, to do with electric vehicles and water, embodied carbon and concrete, variety of things like that, as you can see here. But the more important section of the resolution for what we're talking about tonight has to do with energy efficiency, and specifically with compliance margins, which are a bit complicated, so I'll spend some time trying to explain it well. A compliance margin is the way that the state measures the energy efficiency of a given building, in particular of non-residential buildings and also mid and high-rise buildings. And this graphic here is to kind of show what it's meant to measure. So it's calculated in a percentage between 0 and 100. And 0% is the state's energy efficiency requirement. So a building that has a 0% compliance margin is exactly what the state requires, no more, no less. If a building had 100% compliance margin, it would be 0 net energy. It's as perfect as you can get, basically. And anywhere in the middle of that is better than the state by a given percentage. If you had a 10% compliance margin, you're 10% better than that state baseline. So you can see here the actual building is a little bit greener, and that difference there is our compliance margin. Okay. So, any building might have a compliance margin of 2% or 10 or 15 or whatever it might be, depending on how efficient the building is. They just have to make sure that they're 0 or above in order for them to be legal according to the state. However, a city can actually require all new buildings to have a higher compliance margin. So a city might be able to require all the buildings to have a 10% compliance margin, so that all of our buildings are actually better than the state code. However, there are limits on that as well. So the California Energy Commission requires that anytime a city is putting on an extra compliance margin for new buildings, it is cost effective. And what that means is that the measures taken to achieve that compliance margin pay for themselves over the course of 30 years. So for instance, someone might build a new building that has super efficient windows and some extra insulation, and they get a 10% compliance margin because of that. And they save so much electricity or, so much natural gas, whatever they're using, they save so much on their energy bills that they pay off that extra cost in 20 years, say. And that would make them cost effective. So there are a variety of cost effectiveness studies that have been published that actually list what compliance margins are cost effective for different climate zones, and actually list out what different cities are allowed to require legally. So if it says that up to 15% is cost effective and Albany were to try to require 30% compliance margin, it would be rejected by the CEC. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll be happy to answer questions afterwards if more come up about this. But we currently have EDR and compliance margins that are in place. EDR margins are very similar, but not calculated in percentages. And they're listed here. So you can see, for example, 16 for mixed fuel retail buildings. It's kind of an odd number. That's the maximum that's cost effective. So that's what we were able to set it as. So these are required for new buildings. They have to reach these levels of energy efficiency. And a few notes about them. They currently don't apply to buildings that are over 4 stories, mid and high rise buildings. And the reason why is because during the development of the proposal, there weren't yet cost effectiveness studies for those building types. So we didn't know what would be cost effective and what we would be allowed to require. Since then, cost effectiveness studies have been published, which is what I'll be talking about more on the next slide. And also just another note, these were designed to incentivize electrification. So of course, they're meant to increase the efficiency of all new buildings, but you'll note that in most cases, electric buildings have lower margin requirements. So it's just less work that they have to do, and it's creating an incentive for people to choose all electric buildings. So with all that said, here's the meat of what we're getting to tonight. As I said moments ago, mid-rise and high-rise buildings are not currently covered by these energy efficiency requirements, but we now have cost effectiveness studies that let us know what we can require. And the answer is that for mixed fuel buildings, for both mid-rise and high-rise, the city can require them to have a 6.7% compliance margin. So again, 6.7% more efficient than that state baseline requirement. And that results in about a 6.7 reduction in emissions. It's pretty equal. This is about an incremental cost of $150 per unit for the building during construction. That does vary pretty widely depending on the specifics of the building, though. It could be much lower or much higher. It's just hard to say because they're very different buildings. But in any case, this margin would create both a cost and a logistical incentive to choose to build all electric for these new buildings. And of course, if they didn't choose to build all electric, it would make the building a more efficient mixed fuel building. In terms of the emissions impact of adding this requirement, it's hard to say exactly how many mid and high-rise buildings are going to be built in the city in coming years. However, they are becoming more common. We have 3 mid-rise buildings that are currently in planning phase right now, with a total of 283 units. So that's quite a few more than we've had in previous years. And these buildings generally emit somewhere between 50 and 100 metric tons of CO2 a year. So theoretically, if this measure were to convince all 3 of those buildings to go all electric, that could save up to 300 tons of CO2. And just to give some context, our total emissions per year for residential buildings right now is about 13,000 tons of CO2. So these are large buildings with, a relatively high emissions for a single building, but of course, not making up a majority of the overall emissions for the city. And again, if the buildings were to choose to stay mixed fuel and take that 6.7% margin, then they would reduce their CO2 by about 7 to 14 tons. I will note briefly that it is also possible to add on a compliance margin requirement for electric mid and high-rise buildings. However, the numbers are incredibly small. It's 0.1% and 1.1%. So it'd be a really, really subtle shift in their efficiency, and then it would kind of undercut the incentive to electrify, which is why the staff is not recommending taking that option. So the staff's recommendation is to recommend to the City Council to adopt a resolution updating our current green building requirements to include this 6.7% compliance margin requirement for the new mid and high-rise mixed fuel buildings. If the committee chooses to take that recommendation, then staff will write that new resolution and present it to the council. And if adopted, we'll then submit it to the CEC for approval and enforce it with the rest of our current requirements. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, especially about our complicated details of compliance margins and anything else you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And quickly, I just want to note that it is 9 o'clock, so technically we need a motion to extend the meeting.
Thanks, Lizzie.
All right, well, we still have one more agenda item beyond this one, in addition to subcommittee updates and future agenda items. Does anybody have a proposal for how much we would extend the meeting by? Committee Member Peterson?
I make a motion, we extend it 30 minutes.
I'll second that motion. Could we do a vote, please?
Yes. Committee Member Breeding?
Aye.
Committee Member Fasoon?
Aye.
Committee Member Larson?
Aye.
Committee Member Peterson?
Aye.
Committee Member Mira Venkatesh?
Aye.
Vice Chair Merchant?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Committee Member Larson?
Yeah, I almost forgot what my question was. Thanks for making that fairly understandable. That was good. So if I understand the way the proposal on the larger building, the margin that's proposed is 6.7 because of the payback period. So it's really about economics. So that's like half the margin that other lower story buildings have. I mean, 10 to 20% was what other buildings had, right? So is that purely because there's not as good a payback on high-rise buildings?
Yeah, basically. The 10 and 20% for those other buildings, basically it's easier to get the payback for the measures that those buildings are able to take. There are different measures involved in the high-rise buildings and different economics.
So I'm kind of seems, like we're almost rewarding these humongous buildings for, like easier on them. And I know it's just, shouting at the wind to say we should have a higher margin on those. That's just not going to happen. But it's just kind of a statement on, how hard all this is, because, money always gets in the way of what we should be doing. But I just want to make sure I understood that.
Yeah, that's the state requirement. So we can't do anything about that. But yes, that's correct. It's all about the economics.
Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, so I think this is great. So I had a question. I mean, it's better than nothing, which is what we had before. So can this have more rapid, does this have to go back to CEC and get approved by them? So we're into a 2-month process before it will become official and on city record as being required.
Yeah, it will have to go back through the CEC, which takes a couple of months. What I can say is that these buildings take a very long time to go through the planning process and to get permits. So I don't think that.
Yeah, so that was my next question. It is tied to when they apply for a building permit, not for planning approval.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and so we're pretty confident both the Saha and the Albany Bowl project. What's the third one?
It's a smaller building that's near El Cerrito Plaza.
But it's more than 4 stories, no?
It's 4.
Oh, it is 4. So currently it's exempt, huh? Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I want to make sure that this will happen rapidly enough. Great, thanks.
Committee Member Larson, do you still have a question as your hand?
Yeah, new question. Do high-rise buildings have a tendency to be more electrified for any reason? I mean, is there a reason that they would have a tendency to go more electric, or is it just as gas and electric are equally used?
I would say that electrification is so new that it's kind of impossible to answer that question. A lot of buildings right now are just starting to electrify, and there are some large ones that are doing so. But everything is changing really quickly, every single year. So I can't say that large buildings are necessarily more likely to than smaller ones.
Committee Member Peterson, did you have another question?
Sorry, I'll take my hand off.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Michelle? All right, great. So we can open this up to public comment now. If anyone from the public would like to give comment on Michelle's presentation and the proposal, please raise your hand. I see one hand raised.
David?
Yeah, I'm still here, even though my ice cream ran out. So I'm sticking with it. Did I understand, and maybe you can't answer this, did you understand that, or did you say that since it wouldn't increase the rating by requiring all electric, that it wouldn't be worth it, and we're not going to do it? If I understand that correctly, I would disagree. I think we should be doing the right thing, and even if requiring all electric didn't increase the rating, et cetera, I think we need to be doing that just because it's the right thing to do for the planet. That's it.
Thank you so much for your comment. I don't see any other hands raised. Let's give it one more second. Okay, great. So now we can bring it to a discussion. Michelle, just to clarify the point, David's question there about why we wouldn't be having a standard for the all electric buildings.
Yeah, I think I might have mixed up some of the words there. I made it a little confusing, but it's possible to require a compliance margin of 0.1 and 1.1% for electric buildings, for buildings that choose to go all electric, but that wouldn't increase the efficiency of those buildings very much. It wouldn't have much of an impact on their greenhouse gas emissions. So it makes more sense to only require a compliance margin for mixed fuel buildings in order to create an extra incentive for builders to choose all electric instead.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, so now we can open it up for a discussion as to whether we should recommend to the City Council that they update the green building standards to include these mid and high-rise buildings and this 6.7% standard. Committee Member Larson, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I was trying to formulate my question or comment. I guess I was thinking along the lines of maybe we can get a little input from the city staff on, is the city trying to encourage more high-rise buildings in order to get more urban, the density of housing increase? And would this have any negative effect on that? Would this disincentivize builders from coming into, to build more high-rise buildings in Albany if we enacted a higher margin?
I can take a first stab at that, and Jeff might have more thoughts, but what I can say is that the added cost from this measure is really not very big in the scale of this kind of project. And, if a developer is able to add 1 or 2 stories to a building, the extra profit that they'll get from that in terms of the sale value or rent is going to far outweigh the extra cost from this measure.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to Michelle's answer. I would say that I think in the development community gets it about this, and a lot of people are voluntarily doing electric buildings and trying to do it, and not just people that we talk to, but I see that in professional magazines and conferences and so forth. It's the way everybody sees it as the wave of the future, and I'm pleasantly surprised that in the development community there's not as much resistance as one might think.
Good, thanks.
Thank you. Committee Member Peterson?
Well, I'm ready to make a motion to accept this. I don't think I didn't see anyone else raising hands. I think my argument would be that this definitely fits in with what we want to incentivize. We would have a gas ban if we really could, which would mean no mixed fuel buildings, period. This is as close as we're going to get to that. Even if it did persuade some developers maybe not to do as big a development as possible, that means they'll still do a more electric building, and we don't get 50 years of gas emissions, or later having to have them do more expensive retrofits. So I think this all works along with what the Climate Action Plan wants us to do. So hopefully someone will second. I make a motion that we accept this and request that staff move it on to City Council for approval.
I second that motion.
Great. Can we vote, please?
Yes. Committee Member Breeding?
I believe she's left, yeah.
Committee Member Fasoon?
Aye.
Committee Member Larson?
Aye.
Committee Member Peterson?
Yes.
Committee Member Mira Venkatesh?
Yes.
Vice Chair Merchant?
Yes.
Great, motion carries.
Great. Who's doing the presentation on the Eucalyptus tree pathogen, which is up next? Is that you, Lizzie, or?
I am taking that on.
Just to do a time check, so it's 9:12. Will we have time to hear the presentation and do a discussion around it?
I could do this very briefly. I've got a 4 or 5 slide PowerPoint, or I could just verbally give you a real quick report. And that, with a couple of minutes, and see if that addresses your.
Let's hear your PowerPoint, and then we can check in after if it's only 4 or 5 slides. It's good to have a visual, and then we can check in about time afterward.
Okay.
Just keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you want more details, I'll begin by saying if you want more detail, we made a presentation. My colleague Margot Cunningham, the city's natural areas coordinator, made a presentation to the City Council Monday night, and you might want to watch that. And this is a very abbreviated version of that. So what we have going on in the East Bay in particular is a rather sudden dieback of eucalyptus trees. And you certainly can notice it as you drive by or walk by or visit Albany Hill. And it's also occurring in various East Bay Regional Park districts, parks, and there are other locations as well in the East Bay that are having this problem. So the research, this was first noticed last fall. There is some research going on. It's being led by a couple of different groups. One of them is out of UC Berkeley. There's a researcher named Matteo Garbaletto. He's well known for work in the sudden oak death disease several years ago. And he's the director of the Forest Pathology Laboratory at the College of Natural Resources. He's working on this. There also is a researcher with the U.S. Forest Service who conveniently is housed at the USDA building here in Albany. And she is also working on this together with Matteo. They've done some preliminary research and have discovered that there's a pathogen, a latent pathogen in eucalyptus trees that creates a fungus, I guess. I'm not a scientist, so bear with me if I'm getting this a little bit wrong. But it essentially, as a result of this pathogen, there's a fungus that is impacting eucalyptus trees in the East Bay, and it is making them very sick, and in some cases, killing the tree. We have done a couple of things. And there's some research, if you're interested in the details, part of the city council staff report has the preliminary research findings that came out of the UC Berkeley lab. We've done a couple of things so far, and we'll be continuing to work on this. The city hired an arborist to assess the trees, and you can see on this graphic that I have on the screen where their assessments were done. They looked at 390 eucalyptus trees and found that most of them are at best fair health and many of them in poor health, and their recommendation is that they be removed. We have proactively removed or trimmed back 15 trees that were in the arborist and city staff's opinion a high-risk location where along trails or on edges of walkways and roadways and so forth. And you can see this graphic shows an example of a tree that was felled and basically hollowed out, weakened by the disease, and then insects and so forth can get in there. And there's not only just the tree itself may fail, but they also branches can fail as well. So the first phase has been completed, which was essentially an emergency removal or trimming of the high-risk trees. We're doing an assessment of and prioritization of how to remove the other trees. It requires quite a considerable amount of money. It requires some very careful environmental research and analysis in particular, because these trees are also home to the soon expected to be an endangered species, the monarch butterfly. And so we are finding ourselves in the unfortunate place of having to impact a critical ecological habitat. We're working through that, and we'll be trying to address the wildfire risk that is created by these trees dying. And that obviously is a big concern in California these days. And this is an area that is a potential wildland fire risk area. The other thing I wanted to mention is that it is, in addition to it's a multidisciplinary problem. And some people look at this from a recreational perspective, that this wonderful natural area is going to lose its trees. There's the habitat and ecological issues. There are the wildfire issues. I think for this committee, it is a good illustration, a sobering illustration, I guess, of climate change and how adaptation affects Albany. That in this case, our adaptation to climate change is that we're going to have to remove some trees that can impact an ecological habitat that we would really wish we didn't have to do. But we need to do that because of the wildfire risk and because there will eventually be a risk to public safety as these trees die off and as visitors are up on the hill. So we're working through this. It will take a number of months to work out the financing and the plans for doing our best to manage the monarch butterfly habitat. We expect that it will probably take several years. We will develop plans to, if we can, preserve some of the trees in the critical habitat areas or replant new trees that will be a adequate substitute for the monarchs, and hopefully create the Albany Hill of the future that's more sustainable as climate change goes on. The reason this pathogen, and just to wrap it up, the reason this pathogen seems to have taken hold is the drought. And that it turns out, I didn't realize this, but eucalyptus trees are not really well suited to the California environment. They do need a lot of water, and they just have been, the stress of the last couple of years has triggered this pathogen that creates this fungus that is killing the tree. So I'll stop there. I'll try to answer any questions you might have, but it is not my area of expertise, particularly the science side of it. So I'll do my best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And just a point of clarification, is there any action for the committee being asked around this, or is this just to share the information with us?
This is just to share the information, I believe, is the committee's request to get a report on it. And I think it's timely and appropriate because it is a climate change related situation we're dealing with here.
Does anyone have any questions for Jeff? I'm not seeing any questions, so let's open this up for public comment. I do see a couple of hands raised.
Jeremiah?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Just one thing, it is climate change. I was just going to suggest maybe implementing a policy to where if they're going to cut down any of these poor trees, or if they're going to be using tools, power tools, that they should all be electric, right? You know, last thing we need is gas powered chainsaws up there leaking gear oil and chain oil everywhere. So I hope that if we're going to do this, we lead by example and do it right and use electric chainsaws and things like that, electric wood chippers, or I don't know. There's this brand, I guess it's Ego. They got a lot of electric things coming out. I'm going to get some of this Ego stuff. But anyway, that's my suggestion. If we're going to be doing any work up there, it should be done electronically.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Looks like we have David with his hand raised as well.
David?
Hey, yeah, real quick. Yeah, so I'm a native Californian, and I hate eucalyptus. They're non-native, and so you know, just get that out there right from the get-go. You know, if they all disappeared tomorrow, it wouldn't be soon enough for me. So, and I've actually thought, you know, Albany Hill, it should be, you know, we should honor the Native Americans and restore it to its natural habitat and get rid of the eucalyptus. And so that's what I would love to see happen. Last time I walked up there was a gorgeous sunset up there, but you couldn't see it because the trees are so thick, you know, you can't see anything. You know, it's just, you know, it's just kind of a wasted opportunity for, you know, probably the greatest views in the Bay, other than Grizzly Peak for sunsets, would be on top of Albany Hill. So, you know, I would like to see it just get restored. But I love monarch butterflies, and I had no idea that they actually use those trees. I mean, being potential habitat is one thing, but if they're actually using those trees and have been, and they are, you know, being used, then I would say no. You know, I vote for the monarch butterflies. But if the monarch butterflies don't use them, and you know, they're just quote, you know, habitat, you know, I'd lend myself to, you know, let's get rid of the trees and put in native species that would support the monarchs, and you know, restore the native habitat up there. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I don't see any other hands raised. I will note that it's 9:23. We don't have that much left to cover on the agenda. We have not discussed this item. A few more things. I wonder if we just might want to make a motion just to be safe to extend the meeting by 10 minutes to 9:40. Would anyone like to make that motion or have any comment on that?
I'll move that.
Thank you.
I think if we can limit it to the next 10 minutes, that'd be great.
Okay. So are you revising and making a motion to extend
No,
it?
I'm saying I'll go along with it for this
Well, I'll
one.
make the motion. I so moved.
Does anybody second Committee Member Peterson's motion? Eric, okay, thank you.
Committee Member Fasoon?
Yes.
Committee Member Larson?
Yes.
Committee Member Peterson?
Yes.
Committee Member Mira Venkatesh?
Yes.
Vice Chair Merchant?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. We'll try not to go all the way to 9:40. But so now we will open it up for a discussion among the committee on Jeff's presentation, if anybody would like to discuss it. Committee Member Peterson?
So I think Jeff spoke correctly. This is extremely sobering. I was up in Tilden Park near the Brazil Room the other day and noticed there are a lot of dead eucalyptus along Wildcat. And these trees are dead. They're so stressed that they won't come back, even if we get a few good years of rain. They're pretty much gone at this point. So again, I think this just underscores the importance of us trying to take us, action now as much as it's only going to get worse. Other species of trees are going to start dying too, and it's not going to be pretty. So again, this whole thing about how quickly we go and what we do, we need to be acting much more quickly because it's on us now and it's going to get worse.
All right, I don't see anybody else with their hands raised. Jeffy, thank you so much for that presentation.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have the subcommittee updates. I will say that Committee Member Larson and I already gave our update on the forum that we're hosting tomorrow, so we don't have a further one on the engagement and outreach subcommittee. We did hear from the multifamily EV charging pilot subcommittee that pilot program had passed City Council this week, so that's going to go forward. Are there any other further updates from that subcommittee?
No, I don't think we even have met since that happened, but I would like to continue to meet. So I'll or Michelle, if you want to, per your schedule, put something together, it'd be good to sort of find out a little bit more about how that's going to proceed. Have some ideas I'd like to share.
As far as next steps go for this project, staff is going to start mapping out an implementation roadmap and timeline, and then we will bring an update to the committee within the next meeting or two for a discussion. That's our plan right now. Yeah, we will definitely provide updates.
One thought I had about this, and not to drag this out, I think there should be an effort to do an initial outreach to building occupants, to rather than working it through building owners, is to find locations where there's a strong interest in having an electric vehicle. And I think we would fail if we just found building owners that would like some freebie work, and then the chargers don't get much use. So I think it should be driven by desire of the tenants and not by the desire of the building owners. And I think if we do enough outreach to renters in the multifamily buildings, we do targeted contacts, we should be able to do that. Just my thought.
Thanks, Member Peterson. And I'll just note that we do have that as part of our proposal, as the first step is to do outreach both to building owners and tenants. Thanks for bringing that to the focus again.
Yeah, and great job. You did a fantastic job on that presentation, and City Council was unanimous on its approval. So this was fantastic. This was a real win. So excellent work all around.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So now we are moving on to item number 6, future agenda items. Does anyone have anything they would like to propose for a future meeting? Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, I want to make sure we get we have a new subcommittee. So this was the mandate for point of sale electrification incentives, or whatever we called it. Make sure that's on there. And I had another one, but I'll have to look for it. Thanks.
Member Larson?
Yeah, earlier we were talking about, Lizzie, you mentioned that we do have a yearly update on progress to plan. When would that be happening? Is that something we should put on a future agenda item?
We could. I think it's something that if we were to put it on now, it would probably roll for a couple months. We probably wouldn't want to bring it until February and March when we have better stats to report on.
I mean, just to get it on the calendar. So
we can put it on the calendar. I think this is an item that we know is coming, and so I think by listing it, it would just take up space on the agenda. I can check in with the chair and vice chair though about how they feel about that.
Okay.
I do know we do have members of the public with their hands raised. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if we could give Jeremiah some time to speak.
Jeremiah?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I just was gonna say that. Sorry, 1 second here. Yeah, future agenda item. I was going to try to suggest possibly, what do we want to call it? Volunteer to clean the streets. I don't know. Each one has, like, let's say someone wants to pick Solano Avenue between Cornell and Talbot on the north side. Oh, adopt a street cleanup, something like that. I was wondering if we could start something like that in Albany, to where residents could adopt a street in Albany and help keep it clean. You know, I was just wondering a future agenda item, possibly adopt a street program in Albany to help pick up litter and climate action related stuff. Help keep the gutters clean, maybe in front of your house or things like that. So adopt a street program. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. All right, I don't see any more hands raised, so we can move on to item number 7, which is our next meeting is November 17th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And that is the last item on our agenda, so we are ready to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all so much for gathering tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, bud.
Leading the